Sigma empaths love with a depth that feels almost otherworldly, quietly, intensely, and without hesitation. When they give their heart, they give the most honest version of themselves. They listen beyond words, feel beyond emotions, and connect beyond appearances. Their love is not loud, it's steady. It's not demanding, it's nurturing. And because they feel so deeply, they pour themselves fully into the people they care about. But the same depth that makes their love powerful also teaches them when to leave. They don't walk away out of anger or bitterness. They walk away the moment they realize they're loving alone. They leave quietly because their exit is never meant to hurt, it's meant to heal. They don't slam doors or create chaos. They choose silence, clarity, and peace. By the time they slip away, they've already spent months noticing the emotional imbalance, the fading effort, the subtle changes others ignore. They've already processed the grief in private. They've already forgiven what broke them. And when they finally go, it's with a softness that hides how hard it was to let go. Their quiet departure reflects the one truth they live by. Love is sacred, and they will not remain where it's taken for granted. Let me ask you something only a true empath will understand. Have you ever loved someone deeply, yet left quietly because staying meant losing yourself? Share it in the comments. Your story might give someone the courage they need today. If this message feels like your truth, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath. This is where your depth, your intuition, and your quiet strength are understood. And if you watched until the end, type quiet love so I know you're one of the Sigma empaths who loves deeply and leaves silently when the heart is no longer met. They love with full presence, but they leave the moment the connection becomes one-sided. Sigma empaths don't love halfway. When they care, they show up with their entire heart, their attention, their emotional presence, their intuition, their generosity. They love in a way that makes the other person feel seen in places they didn't even know needed witnessing. They pour into the relationship with sincerity, patience, and emotional depth, creating a connection most people only experience once in their lives. But because they love with such fullness, they also feel imbalance instantly, the moment the connection becomes one-sided. When their effort is no longer met, when their emotional energy isn't returned, when they begin carrying the relationship alone, something inside them shifts, quietly, gently, but decisively. They begin noticing the small things, the messages that go unanswered a little longer, the conversations that feel lighter, the tone that no longer holds warmth, the moments where presence is replaced by distraction. They notice when their love starts pouring into empty space instead of a shared exchange. And while they don't immediately walk away, they feel the ache of imbalance settling into their intuition. Sigma empaths don't resent the other person. They simply recognize a truth that can't be ignored. Love cannot survive if only one heart is showing up. And because they refuse to become someone's emotional caretaker while starving themselves, they begin to withdraw, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. As the one-sidedness grows, the Sigma empath starts pulling their energy inward. They stop initiating conversations. They stop over-explaining their feelings. They stop carrying emotional weight that isn't theirs. They shift from giving endlessly to observing quietly. They protect their heart long before it breaks, and by the time they walk away, they've already mourned the connection. Their exit isn't dramatic or loud. It's soft, final, and filled with clarity. They leave because staying would mean betraying themselves. They leave because love for them is a living exchange, and when it stops flowing both ways, it stops being love. And when a Sigma empath leaves, they don't come back, not because they stopped caring, but because they cared too much to stay somewhere their heart was no longer met. They give emotionally, but they refuse to stay where their soul is slowly draining. Sigma empaths are natural givers, not because they're trying to earn love, but because generosity is built into their emotional DNA. When they care about someone, they offer depth, understanding, patience, and emotional grounding. They hold space for people's fears, dreams, insecurities, and growth. They pour into the connection with intention, supporting the other person in ways that feel rare and irreplaceable. But the same sensitivity that makes them incredible partners also tells them when something is wrong. They feel when the emotional flow stops being mutual. They feel when their presence is being consumed instead of appreciated. And they feel when the relationship starts taking more from them than it gives back. That's the moment their soul begins to tire, and they refuse to keep giving from a place that drains them. They are not afraid of effort, they are afraid of emptiness. Sigma empaths can handle challenges, disagreements, emotional storms, but they cannot tolerate emotional starvation. They sense when they're becoming the only source of stability in the connection, the only one initiating healing, the only one trying to hold everything together. Slowly, silently, they begin to feel their energy thinning, their intuition tightening, their heart becoming heavier. They notice how much of themselves they're giving and how little is returning to replenish them. And because they value emotional alignment more than attachment, they begin to pull back, not as punishment, but as protection. What makes Sigma empaths powerful is that they don't wait for collapse. They don't wait until they're empty. They don't wait until they lose themselves. The moment they feel their soul dimming, the moment they feel their inner light flicker because of emotional imbalance, they start preparing to leave. They withdraw their energy. They reclaim their boundaries. They step back from giving more than they can sustain. Their love remains real, but their survival instincts begin guiding them more strongly than their attachment. And by the time they walk away, they've already restored the pieces of themselves that the relationship was draining. When they leave with quiet dignity. They don't demand apologies or closure. They don't ask for reciprocation that should have been natural. They simply choose themselves. Because a Sigma empath would rather walk away alone with a full soul than stay connected with a heart slowly dying. They sense fading effort long before the other person admits it. Sigma empaths don't wait for someone to say, "I'm losing interest." They feel it long before the words ever appear. The moment effort fades, even slightly, their intuition picks up the shifts. Like a sudden change in temperature, they notice when the enthusiasm in someone's messages weakens, when the time spent together feels less intentional, when the other person becomes distracted in ways they never used to. These signs are invisible to most, but to a Sigma empath are loud. They don't need explanations, excuses, or dramatic confessions. They feel the emotional withdrawal in the silence between the words, in the pauses that last a little too long, in the affection that stops arriving naturally. And even though the other person may try to act as if nothing has changed, the empath already knows. The heart on the other side is stepping back. They sense the difference between someone being busy and someone being unavailable, between someone who still cares but is overwhelmed and someone who's slowly exiting emotionally. They feel the hesitation, the inconsistency, the lack of presence. They notice how effort shifts from voluntary to force, how warmth becomes habit instead of desire, how closeness becomes convenience instead of connection. And although Sigma empaths rarely call these changes out, they feel every single one of them with painful clarity. They pretend not to notice at first, giving the other person space to process their own emotional confusion, but internally, the empath is already grieving the soft unraveling of what once felt mutual. What makes Sigma empaths different is their emotional honesty with themselves. They don't cling to hope when the energy tells them the truth. They don't try to force affection that no longer flows naturally. They don't chase after someone whose heart has already stepped backward. Instead, they begin preparing quietly, gracefully, for the ending they know is coming. They withdraw in small ways. They protect their energy. They detach before the damage becomes too deep. Their heart doesn't break suddenly. It breaks in stages, long before the other person admits what the empath has known for weeks. By the time the truth finally surfaces, by the time the other person says something feels different or "I don't know what I want anymore," the Sigma empath is already emotionally gone. They sensed the fading effort the moment it began. They carried the weight of that truth alone. And when they finally walk away, they do it gently because they've already lived the heartbreak long before anyone else acknowledged it. They walk away quietly to protect their peace, not to punish anyone. Sigma empaths do not leave to make a statement, to provoke guilt, or to teach anyone a lesson. They walk away quietly because peace is their oxygen, and the moment a relationship begins to suffocate their inner world, their soul chooses survival over attachment. Their exit is never loud or dramatic. It's soft, deliberate, and deeply internal. They leave without slamming doors, without accusations, without demanding explanations, because by the time they reach that point, they've already understood everything they needed to understand. Their silence is not anger, it is clarity. It is the moment they recognize that staying would cost them more than leaving ever will. They do not seek revenge, closure, or validation. They don't craft speeches or emotional grand exits. They simply withdraw their energy, their attention, and their emotional presence. They retreat into the sanctuary of their own inner calm where they can breathe again. This quiet departure is their way of choosing themselves without harming anyone else. They know that the more noise a goodbye carries, the less healing it brings. So they choose stillness, they choose dignity, they choose a departure that reflects the depth of their character, not the weight of their disappointment. Walking away quietly is how they restore their spirit, not how they punish someone who hurt them. What most people don't understand is that Sigma empaths often leave long after they've tried everything. They've communicated, supported, forgiven, adjusted, listened, and once they realize that the relationship no longer nurtures their soul, they let go with the same gentleness they once loved with. They don't create conflict because conflict doesn't close the wound, acceptance does. And walking away quietly is their final act of acceptance. It is the moment they honor their intuition more than their attachment, their peace more than their longing, their future more than their past. And ironically, their quiet exit often speaks louder than any confrontation could. People feel the absence of an empath in ways they never felt their presence, not because the empath was unnoticed, but because their calm, nurturing energy held everything together. When they leave, the silence echoes, the emotional support disappears, the space feels colder. And that's when others finally realize the Sigma empath didn't walk away to punish them, they walked away to save themselves. Their intuition tells them when someone's feelings have changed, even if the words don't. Sigma empaths feel emotional truth long before it's spoken. They can sense the moment someone's heart shifts, even if that person continues to act as if nothing has changed. Their intuition catches the subtle changes in tone, the lack of enthusiasm, the sudden hesitation, the way conversations feel lighter, shorter, less connected. To the world, everything may look the same, but to a Sigma empath, the emotional landscape has already transformed. They feel when someone's affection softens, when interest fades, when love becomes obligation instead of desire. And though the other person might still say, "I care," the empath hears the quiet truth beneath the words, "Not the way you used to." They don't need dramatic signs or confessions. They notice the difference in how someone looks at them, how they show up, how they prioritize time. They feel when the warmth in someone's voice cools, when their actions lose intention, when their presence feels distracted rather than devoted. Even the smallest deviations, a missed detail, a forced laugh, a conversation that no longer carries depth, reveal the emotional shift. And because Sigma empaths experience relationships through energy, not illusion, they can't unfeel what their intuition has already registered. The heart speaks louder than words, and they listen to that language with supernatural clarity. What makes this painful is that Sigma empaths don't confront people immediately. They give space, they observe, they allow the other person time to process their own changing emotions. They hope it's stress, exhaustion, or temporary confusion. They hope the connection will recalibrate, but deep inside, they already know. They've seen the slow unraveling. They've felt the emotional distance grow inch by inch, day by day. And while the words may remain affectionate, the energy does not lie. The empath feels the truth even when the other person can't admit it themselves. Once their intuition confirms the change, the Sigma empath begins detaching gracefully, not out of resentment, but out of acceptance. They stop giving more than they should. They protect their spirit from the slow heartbreak of holding on when the other person is letting go. Their withdrawal is gentle, dignified, and rooted in self-preservation. And when the truth finally surfaces, when the other person finally admits, "My feelings changed," the empath isn't surprised. They felt it long before the words arrived. Their intuition whispered what the heart already knew. Love doesn't disappear suddenly, it fades quietly, and they are always the first to feel it. They detach gracefully because they've already processed the pain in silence. Sigma empaths don't detach suddenly. They detach quietly, slowly, and with a kind of emotional elegance that comes from having already lived through the hurt alone. Long before they walk away, they've spent nights replaying conversations, questioning their own intuition, and feeling the ache of a connection that's no longer meeting them halfway. They don't announce their heartbreak. They don't seek pity, validation, or dramatic closure. Instead, they process everything internally. They grieve the version of the relationship they hoped for. They mourn the effort they invested, and they accept truths that others are still afraid to admit. By the time they begin pulling back, the emotional storm has already passed through their heart, silently, privately, and completely unseen. Because they process pain alone, their detachment appears calm to others. Someone who hasn't paid attention might think the empath is suddenly cold or distant, not realizing the empath already burned through every emotion while trying to save the connection. What looks like calm is actually exhaustion. What looks like clarity is actually acceptance. They detach with gentleness because the anger has already melted away. They no longer cling, plead, or fight, not because they don't care, but because they've learned the difference between holding on and hurting themselves. Their detachment isn't a reaction, it's a resolution, the quiet kind that comes after their soul whispers, "You've done enough." As they step back, they do it respectfully. They don't blame, they don't make scenes, they don't punish. They simply stop giving energy to a place that can no longer hold it. Their conversations become lighter, their presence becomes softer, their attention becomes selective. It's not a performance, it's healing. They are reclaiming their power one quiet breath at a time, allowing themselves to rise again without the weight of emotional imbalance dragging them down. Their grace doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It means they transformed the pain into understanding before anyone even noticed something was wrong. And when they finally walk away, it is with a peaceful heart, not because the relationship didn't matter, but because the empath refuses to stay anywhere that requires them to sacrifice their self-worth to feel loved. They let go the same way they loved, deeply, sincerely, and with a quiet courage that most people only understand long after the Sigma empath is gone. When they leave, it's final. They don't return to what broke them. Sigma empaths do not walk away lightly. Their heart holds on long after it has been hurt, long after it has been disappointed, long after the signs have shown them it's time to let go. They try, they repair, they communicate, they forgive, and they do all of it quietly, hoping the connection can still be saved. But once their soul reaches the point of emotional truth, once they see that staying means sacrificing themselves, the decision crystallizes inside them with absolute clarity. When they leave completely. There are no half goodbyes, no return trips, no revisiting the same wounds, hoping for different outcomes. To them, walking away is not an escape, it's a rebirth. And once they choose their peace over the pain, they never revisit the storm that broke them. They don't walk away to teach lessons or punish anyone. They walk away because they finally understand the cost of staying. They recognize that returning to someone who hurt them would only reopen wounds that took so much time and quiet strength to heal. Their boundaries harden, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Their silence becomes the closing door, their absence the final chapter. People often think the empath will come back because of how deeply they loved. But what they don't realize is that Sigma empaths love deeply, not blindly. Once they see the truth, they never unsee it. Once they feel the emotional shift, they never forget it. And once they decide to leave, nothing can pull them back into the space that dimmed their spirit. What makes their exit so powerful is its finality. There's no dramatic ending, no angry confrontation, no emotional collapse, just a quiet, definitive shift towards self-preservation. They stop replaying what happened. They stop hoping for what could have been. They stop romanticizing the version of the person they once believed in. Instead, they focus their energy inward, healing, rebuilding, and transforming. Their heart becomes stronger, clearer, wiser, and they refuse to allow anyone, no matter how much they cared, to break them twice. The world often realizes too late that when a Sigma empath walks away, the door is locked behind them forever. Because for them, closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision to never return to the very place where their spirit learned how to survive without the person who once meant everything. Sigma empaths love with a rare intensity, the kind of love that heals, listens, understands, and transforms, but that same depth gives them the strength to walk away with quiet finality when the connection stops honoring their soul. They don't leave because they stopped caring. They leave because they finally started caring for themselves. And once they choose peace over pain, once they reclaim their energy, once they close the emotional door, they never reopen it. Their goodbye is not a threat, it's a truth. And it echoes long after their footsteps fade. Now, let me ask you something only a true empath will understand. Have you ever loved someone deeply yet walked away quietly to protect your peace? Share your story in the comments. Another empath will read it and feel less alone. If this message feels like your truth, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath for more content that speaks directly to your heart, your intuition, and your inner strength. And if you watch until the end, type "I choose peace" in the comments so I know you're one of the rare souls who loves deeply and leaves gracefully when the heart is no longer met.